I have the privilege of being the president of Texas Eagle Forum, but even more, I am privileged to have 3 granddaughters here who just had their picture taken with the governor of the state of Texas. I have to fight back tears, I'm sorry. I mean, that was so exciting for me. Thank you for being patient with all of us. What an exciting speech we have just heard. And such a fabulous number of points that he made.
Yes.
But I have to tell you, one that really touches the hearts, I think, of most every American today, and certainly every Texan, is traditional marriage. And more than once he said, marriage between a man and a woman. Today, because of judicial supremacists, Texas is one of only 13 states that still has marriage just between a man and a woman. So we're grateful for that. And why has that happened? And as Governor Abbott and former Attorney General Abbott said, he's been fighting this for so many years. In 1997, we passed a law that said marriage will be between a man and a woman. And then, a few years later, working with a very good friend, Kelly Shackelford, and today Liberty Institute, and Jonathan Symes, with Texas Values, we passed a constitutional amendment. And the people, the citizens, the voters of Texas overwhelmingly voted to make marriage in the state of Texas only between a man and a woman. But now we are looking at the U.S. Supreme Court, and we are expecting that the U.S. Supreme Court will not do the right thing. And so in the state of Texas, we've got to prepare. Because we're going to lead this nation on how to preserve marriage between a man and a woman. Thank God for Attorney General Ken Paxton. He not only acted, he acted like this, and he did exactly the right thing to preserve marriage in the state of Texas between a man and a woman. Now we have a wonderful bill that I want you to write down the number, and I want you to talk to every one of your legislators about. It is House Bill 623 by Cecil Bell, Representative Cecil Bell, who will be here for a rally a little bit later. That House Bill 623 is called the Preservation of Sovereignty and Marriage Act. Why sovereignty? Because the 10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution says that the states are sovereign. Yeah. And we have got to make sure that that voice is heard all the way to Washington, D.C. Also, Senator Charles Perry from Lubbock, Texas, is carrying the companion bill to that, Senate Bill 673. So we're very, very grateful for those 2 authors. Representative Cecil Bell already has not only him authoring, but 2 co-authors and 38 co-sponsors. Folks, I hope after today, after you go and ask your legislator to sign on as a co-sponsor of this bill, that we end up with 100 co-sponsors for this bill. Why? What does this bill do? It establishes that courts, we understand, will not always be able to limit overreaching by courts. Why in the world, when our founders of this nation created 3 equal branches of government and really thought that the judicial branch would be the weakest? It's just interpreting those laws. It is interpreting and applying those laws in the Constitution. It's not supposed to be making laws. They're not 9 gods on the U.S. Supreme Court. Justices, they are justices. And so, we understand that courts will not always be able to limit overreaching by other courts. We understand that. So, what House Bill 623 does is establish a stronger check and balance against judicial supremacy. So, judicial supremacy is a problem. Courts who are acting kind of Obama-esque, aren't they? Yeah. He thinks that as an executive, he can just make law. One day he's saying, if I did that, I'd be an emperor, not a president. The next day, he's being an emperor. The courts will not always limit overreaching by other courts. State and local governments, what this bill says, state and local governments may not recognize, grant, or enforce a same-sex marriage license. No way. It also protects taxpayers. How? Because it says, if you think that you need, as Travis County, Austin, Texas, did just this last week, issue a marriage license to 2 women, then we can say, okay, you will not receive any taxpayer money. That may be added later, and there's some really bright legal minds working on this right now. Wouldn't it be wonderful to have an elected official in the state of Texas who is statewide elected, who is the person who is ultimately responsible for seeing who issues and who doesn't issue marriage licenses in the state of Texas? So then that person can be held to account. So we are most hopeful that House Bill 623, Senate Bill 673 will pass in order to protect marriages. And I have to give credit to one man who came up with this great idea, because he's the same man who came up with a great idea of saying, you know, I think if a woman is seeking an abortion for her baby, that there needs to be care for her in case anything goes wrong. So therefore, within a certain radius of an abortuary, there should be a way for that doctor to have privileges in that hospital to protect that life. That person who came up with that idea was Andy Schlafly, Phyllis Schlafly's son. Andy Schlafly is working with us in Texas because we are one of only 13 states that still recognizes marriage only as between a man and a woman, who came up with this idea of saying, this has got to protect state sovereignty. So thank God and thank him for using Andy Schlafly for coming up with these wonderful ideas to protect our sovereignty and to protect our marriage. And I look forward to working with every one of you to see this bill passed into law. Thank you, and God bless you.